Going up, the latest from podnews.net with AdvertiseCast. Podtrac's US data for August shows a 7% increase in global downloads over July. There's no change in the top 5, with iHeart Podcasts being number 1 for podcasts and showing an 11% increase in total global downloads. Libsyn's AdvertiseCast saw an increase of 27% of global downloads month on month. The data measures participating publishers. A new magazine is getting ready for launch. Sound Sorceresses will showcase the talent and innovation of women working in audio storytelling. Acast announced a strategic partnership with German podcast producer Zebralution. Acast will host and distribute the company's shows, and programmatic advertising is now available through the Acast marketplace. A new event, PodCon MX, has been announced for Mexico City in early November. The event is presented by RSS.com, and I will be one of the speakers. Audia has released Fader 3.0, which promises fully integrated podcasts as well as a new user interface. The company is to acquire 2 new companies towards the end of the year. On its Seatback Entertainment, Delta is now listing 2 Spotify video podcasts within the TV series section. Wave, a turn your podcast into snackable video service, has removed its free plan. There's now a 7-day free trial, and it's also simplified its pricing from 4 separate paid plans to just 1 unlimited plan at $15.99. Clubhouse is evolving to being a messaging app rather than a live chat app. The new app lets you leave voice notes to one another, a little like Anchor was in 2016. Podcast One's first day on NASDAQ saw the stock price land at $4.39. We link to the team ringing the bell today. We can spot Jordan Harbinger. Who else can you spot? An Australian media company, Mamamia, shared the findings of a new study last week in an upfront showcase in Sydney. 2/3 of women are managing household budgets, the company revealed. In People News, Matthew Dunn-Miles has been appointed internal journalist and media manager at Strise. That's the company producing The Laundry, focused on financial crime and anti-money laundering practices. Time for some tech stuff. For the new podcast namespace is now the 5th biggest namespace in use in podcasting. Only 2 years after launch, it's present in more than 1 in 5 podcast feeds, in spite of not being used by Apple or Spotify. A proposal for a podcast pinned feature has been put forward, an open way of identifying a recommended entry point to a show. It mirrors proprietary functionality announced recently by Spotify. Also mirroring proprietary functionality announced recently by Spotify, Podroll allows creators to recommend other shows you might enjoy listening to. And the Pod News Weekly Review this week includes interviews with Ainsley Costello and Sam Mean from Wavelake. And in podcast news, TechCrunch Startup News lets you listen to select TechCrunch articles on startups coverage, who's raising, who's exiting, and who's changing the world. It's part of the Airwave podcast network, and we thank them for their support. Podcasting 2.0 this week features Cameron from IPFS Podcasting and Alberto Batella from RSS.com. Today Explained has launched Blame Capitalism, a special 4-part series exploring America's growing frustration with capitalism. It drops every Friday in the feed. It's the 22nd anniversary of the September the 11th terrorist attacks in the US, and Compelled talks to a survivor of the Pentagon crash site. The show will also hit its 1 millionth lifetime download this week. The host of Deep Roots, former professional rugby player Damian Brown, plans to climb Mount Kilimanjaro not once, but twice, with 3 of his podcast listeners. And Taskmaster, the People's Podcast, has a new host, comedian Jenny Eclair. This podcast is sponsored by AdvertiseCast. AdvertiseCast connects thousands of podcasts with thousands of advertisers and has been matching podcasts with brands since 2016. Find your fit. Join AdvertiseCast, the premier podcasting network, at advertisecast.com. And that's the latest from our newsletter. To read all the stories and subscribe, we're at podnews.net.